Hi, Field School. So I hope you all had a good weekend and that you were able to successfully start a fire using natural materials. Last week I talked to you about one, creating and starting a fire, and two, what we were doing this week was we were going to talk about stoves leading up to the summer and hopefully all the camping that you all are going to do. So today I have a couple of different stoves, one of which, and I'm just going to kind of explain how these work and why you use one stove as compared to the other stove. So this stove right here, this big stove, this is kind of like a stove that you have at home. The only difference is this stove is something that you can pick up and carry and bring along on a car camping trip. It is run by propane gas, and it's super easy and super efficient to cook all of your meals on. I use this quite a bit, and you've all seen this a few times at field school when we're cooking for Forest Fire Friday. What I'd like to talk about though is these other stoves that we have, which are called backpacking stoves. And the reason why they're called backpacking stoves is they're really compact, very light, and they're very fuel efficient, which means that they don't go through fuel very fast, and you can use it multiple times throughout your entire trip. The difference between these stoves and the bigger stove, besides the size of it, is the fuel that you use. Okay? This is propane, which means it's pressurized gas in here. What is in these fuel bottles is actual liquid gas, but by the time you're done working with the stove and what's called priming it, you turn the liquid gas into a vapor gas. So I'm going to go through and kind of set up this stove for you so you can see how this all works and kind of explain certain aspects of the stove for you. So like I said, you have your fuel bottle. Each fuel bottle on each stove has a pump. All right, this pump is what creates pressure inside the fuel bottle, all right, to allow this stove to work. Now this is my favorite stove, and some of you know about this stove. We call this the transformer. The reason why we call this a transformer is because it doesn't look like much, but all of a sudden you start to open it up and it turns into something quite different than this. And this is your handy dandy backpacking stove. Now, in order for this stove to work, you need to connect this tube to the fuel bottle, lock it down tight, and then it is ready to operate. Now, there's two on-off switches here. To start, you always turn this on-off switch. You turn it totally on, which allows the liquid inside here to move up this gold coil and into this reservoir. But before you actually get to the point where you're seeing liquid come out of this area, you need to pump this. You need to pump it 30 times. Now, a lot of the students, you've heard this before. You've heard how many times we pump it. 30 times is a good number. What you're doing when you're pumping this, you're creating pressure inside this canister. You have to create pressure. Pressure is created two ways. One by this pumping, and the second, when we get to it, is through heat. So let's say I've pumped it 30 times. There's a couple other key components here. One is the heat reflector, and this heat reflector sits underneath the stove. And what this does is, one, it protects underneath it, but it also allows that any of the heat that's escaping from down low hits this and is generated back up to your pot. The other thing you have is your windscreen, okay? And windscreen does one very important thing, which it blocks the wind from the flame, but it also creates an element where it traps heat also inside. And that goes around like so. Now, I'm going to take this off again, put that back on later. I told you that we need two things to create pressure. One was the pumping, and two now is the heat. And the heat means that we have to light this thing. Now, you turn on this stove right here, okay? And what this does is this releases liquid into this little catch tray down here. And you open enough where you hear the liquid and see it for about 3 seconds until it collects enough liquid in there that you can light it. So now I'm going to light this. It's lit, it's going, it's hot. And what's happening now is that this heat combined with the pumping pressure is creating more pressure back up this tube and creating enough pressure in here that the next time we go to light this, you're not going to see liquid come out of here. You're now going to see vapor gas. So we got to sit here and we got to wait until this totally burns out before we can go through the next process. While we're doing that, get your windscreen ready, because you want to make sure that you're fully prepared to go ahead and light this. The other thing too, if we were cooking right now, we would have all of our stuff set up right here. I have my pots that I would use if I was going to make beans and rice or pasta or anything. I would have all my water in here. I'd have all the ingredients ready, and I'd be ready to go. Okay, so the flame is out. So the next thing that I do, very carefully, I release the vapor gas from here and I stand back. I'm going to pull this off so you can actually see. I stand back, get my when I turn this up really loud, it's going to sound like a jet taking off. Some of you remember how loud this is, and some of you might remember what I use this for. So when I'm camping with my wife and she's still sleeping, I turn this on really loud and make her coffee, and it wakes her up. You hear how loud it is. So this stove, I talked about how efficient it is. It has the ability to boil this amount of water in about 3 minutes. So you can be eating relatively fast when you're backpacking and camping. So the one thing that I haven't talked to you about, the most important part, is when you are done with any stove situation that you have, you need to make sure that you always allow this to cool. This takes a long time for it to cool, all right? If you don't, it's going to be too hot to put away, and we don't want to take the chance of burning ourselves. So I'm going to let all this stuff sit here. I'm going to gather some more stuff possibly to show you, but then I'm going to take a quick break and I'm going to come back and we're going to go over the weekend challenge. Hope you enjoyed the lesson, and have a great weekend.